With the release of the Edge of Fate, Destiny's player base has been swamped by a seemingly endless power grind and the overwhelming amount of information coming from various tips and guides from content creators, Reddit, Twitter, and other sources. Today, I wanted to make a video that covers everything in one place: how leveling actually works, what you get out of it, where you might want to stop, and of course, the most important topic, the best leveling strategies. Let's start with the basics. When the Edge of Fate released, everyone's power was reset back to 10. From here, Bungie made 4 different power brackets that affect your progression and rewards: 10 to 200, 200 to 300, 300 to 400, and 400 to 450, which is currently the maximum power you can obtain before the Ash and Iron update on September 9th, which will increase the power cap to 550. Starting off, any power increase you gain from 10 to 200 will stay permanently, since everyone's power gets reset back to 200 at the start of a new season. From 200 onwards is where your power grind journey really starts. Until you hit 300, you will only get power increases in the form of +4 drops from completing A-rank portal activities. From 300 to 400, your progression slows down even further, since these drops get downgraded to +3s instead. Then comes the dreaded 400 to 450 bracket, which will take up the bulk of your power grind should you choose to pursue the coveted 450. Once you're in this bracket, the only way to level is fixed pinnacles or RNG prime drops, which come in the form of tier 5 gear dropping as +3s. So why do all this? Past 200, the hundredths digit of your power determines what loot you get from A rank completions. 200 gets you tier 2 gear with a chance at tier 3. 300 gets you tier 3 gear with a chance at tier 4, etc. I'm sure many of you have been drawn to the lure of high tier loot from videos that you've watched and roles that you've seen. So let's start with a pressing question. How much does a tier 4 or tier 5 piece of loot actually matter? Since the grind past 400 is such a time sink, I'm here to tell you that 400 power is definitely good enough as a stopping point for most players, even though I will be explaining the best methods for reaching 450 power for those who want to pursue that extra grind. At 400 power, you can consistently farm tier 4 loot, which gives you the ability to get up to 75 stat armor with 11 energy, and double enhanced perk weapons with enhanced mods, which appear to be the biggest power spike that actually matters when it comes to armor and weapon progression. That said, being at 450 does afford you a few privileges, which we'll talk about towards the end of the strategy section, as it is the only way to farm guaranteed tier 5 loot outside of certain circumstances, like the weekly mythic missions and event-based +1 tier offset loot like the current Solstice drops. So what do you need to know before you start grinding? At the center of power leveling is a new system Bungie introduced with Edge of Fate, the Portal. At first glance, the Portal can be very overwhelming to a new player. 4 core playlists, each of them having a wide selection of activities to choose from, with a brand new modifier and scoring system, as well as rotating bonus drops and focuses. So what should you play and how often? Each portal playlist gives a different amount of rewards depending on activity length. During these activities, your random drops as well as your mid-activity chest drops are influenced by your Guardian rank, and since Guardian rank objectives are almost entirely portal based now, you should try and get your Guardian rank as high as possible during your portal grind. Back to activity completion rewards. Solo ops and most fireteam ops give 1 drop, while Onslaught and Coil give 3, with Pinnacles dropping between 1 and 3 rewards depending on the activity. Farming the portal efficiently is about identifying fast activities that are good for your main grind, while keeping an eye out for slower activities that might have a more useful reward to you at a given moment. Looking at portal activities, you'll see some activities have icons next to them ranging from specific weapons and armor pieces to green engrams with a number next to them. These are bonus focuses and bonus drops respectively, and they play a notable role in optimizing your grind and making it a little less monotone. Bonus focuses are daily rotating drops from a portal playlist that are assigned to specific activities within that playlist. These drops are guaranteed on your first B rank completion, and they will drop as a powerful, which is essentially a guaranteed additional power useful drop. Since you're getting 2 power useful drops instead of 1, you can think of your first bonus focus clear as being doubly time efficient, which can offset the additional time some of these activities might take. In addition to that, since you know exactly what is going to drop from a bonus focus, you can save it for a specific moment in your grind where you might need to fill a weapon or armor slot that is lagging behind in order to save yourself from trying to fill it randomly through your main grind activity. The last thing you might notice about bonus focus activities is that during certain events, like the ongoing Solstice, these activities will have an additional drop from the event loot pool tied to them, which will drop as a +0. This might further incentivize you to pick a certain activity as your main grind, even if it's slower or less optimal, since you're getting an additional completion drop that might be useful to you for power purposes or for actual weapon usage. What about the green engrams? These are bonus drops, which work a little differently. Instead of dropping as an extra powerful drop, which is directly helpful for your power grind, these drop as plus zeros or occasionally plus ones if you're below 400, which can help with filling multiple lagging slots, although these bonus drops don't play the same direct role that bonus focuses do when it comes to your grind. So what's the effective difference between the two? While bonus focuses are only guaranteed on your first B or higher completion of the day, bonus drops can stack up to 3 times on a single activity, and every time you complete a portal activity, there's a chance that a random bonus drop will be added to the rewards of any portal activity that isn't already at 3 bonus drops. We'll talk about what implications this system has for farming later, but just know that short activities that have 3 bonus drops might be worth your while when you're out of bonus focuses and have some gaps to fill. We just mentioned a rank system where we were talking about your first bonus focus completion of the day. How does that work? In order to actually get the highest power drops from a portal activity, you need to achieve an A rank score that depends on a variety of factors. Before launching a portal activity, you'll be able to see a fairly accurate score predictor that will give you a good idea of whether or not you've controlled these factors correctly or not. So what are these factors? Let's start with the most obvious ones. Difficulty and modifiers. Early on, you won't even be able to access higher difficulties, but as you get higher and higher power, you'll start to notice that lower difficulties will not give you an A rank despite your best efforts at controlling other variables. This is because higher difficulties intrinsically provide more score, which you need more and more of in order to reach A rank as you go up in power. Specifically, every 20 power, so 200, 220, 240, etc., the A rank threshold is updated, meaning that if you know you have a strategy that works at 200 power, you can relax until you hit 220 before going back in to change any variables affecting your score. Let's talk about modifiers next. On top of difficulty, modifiers each have a positive or negative effect on your gameplay experience, as well as an associated negative or positive effect on the challenge multiplier that you can view before launching any portal activities. More impactful modifiers will generally have a bigger impact on your score, which you can see by hovering over them to see how many green or red triangles are next to the challenge multiplier of said modifier. When it comes to modifier recommendations, most modifiers are actually fairly manageable, especially in solo ops where kills aren't a factor outside of completing an activity challenge. You can simply skip past a lot of the enemies that are affected by combatant modifiers. The best negative modifiers are locked loadout, which is always a huge score increase, no HUD if you can manage it, the less intrusive banes like Shrouded, Caltrops, Threaded, and Rage, Brawn, Match Game, less intrusive arcade-style modifiers like Fire Pit, Martyr, Haste Trade-Off, Hot Step, and Counterfeit, and finally, activity-dependent threats, since the selectable threat modifier for some activities will sometimes be a rather non-threatening damage type that you can afford to take more of. On the other hand, the best positive modifiers are a little simpler. A surge matching your main ability for spam builds or your main weapon is always a plus. Brawler and Grenadier are great for their associated build types, and Air Superiority and Slayer can provide a decent damage bonus for boss melts as well. So you've selected the right difficulty and the modifiers you want. Are there any other factors that affect your score before you launch? There are 3. New gear, season pass bonuses, and your crucible ranks. Equipping any new gear will increase your score in any and all portal activities, and certain ranks in the season pass also provide an additional multiplier. When it comes to PvP, your general crucible rank, comp rank, and quitter status all matter for all PvP playlist drops, so keep that in mind before starting a long trials or comp grind for weapons or armor. There are 2 more factors that can affect your score once you've actually started playing a portal activity. If you're in solo ops, there will always be an additional objective that you can complete for a lot of extra score, requiring you to kill a certain number of enemies a certain way. On top of this, PvE activities also have a time bonus that proportionally scales with how much time you have left on the timer when you finish the activity. These 2 bonuses are so impactful that they can change how you approach your pre-launch modifiers and difficulty and achieve a higher rank than the score predictor indicates. For example, in solo ops, You would need to complete an activity quite quickly with a score predictor a decent amount past the A threshold to guarantee an A if you don't complete the additional objective, since the game expects you to do so when it predicts your score. However, if you were to instead complete the objective every run and finish with a fair amount of time left on the timer, you could even launch the activity with a predicted B or B+, and still consistently finish your farms with an A. This really depends on what power delta you are at, as well as how quickly you complete your activity, so experiment with what nets you an A at the start of every 20 power bracket, since getting a B once isn't hugely detrimental to your power gains, as you'll get a +3 instead of a +4 drop before 300, for example. So how do we bring all these factors together to make for a reliable farming experience? We'll talk about explicit strategy later, but generally what you'll be doing in solo ops is as follows. As you cycle through the 20 power A rank changes and 100 power difficulty thresholds, you'll be going through a cycle of score compositions. When you first start playing a new difficulty, you'll be significantly under power, but you'll have a big boost from the new difficulty's intrinsic score increase, so you likely won't need to do the additional objective or have many modifiers tacked on. At some point, you will reach a threshold where you will need to start stacking modifiers to keep up with the A rank requirement, but you won't need to complete the challenge. Generally speaking, most modifiers won't cost you time if you're playing smart, but completing the objective probably will, unless it's ability kills. Finally, you will reach a point where you are high enough power within a 100 bracket that you have to start doing the challenge on top of your modifiers. This is probably the most annoying period within the entire bracket, but eventually you'll be high enough to graduate to the next difficulty. That's pretty much it for the bulk of the information you need for your main portal grind, but there's 2 more things I want to cover before we move on to strategy. First up, portal challenges. These are effectively the replacement to bounties and pathfinders, and we got a sneak peek of this system last season with heavy metal. Each day you will get 3 new daily challenges, and each week you will get 5 new weekly challenges for a variety of rewards. Completing these will give you some XP, bright dust, bonus drops, and weekly rank progress, 1 rank per daily and 4 ranks per weekly. On top of these rewards, the pass also provides powerfuls, which are useful before 400, and can change what Zavala offers you from week to week. Another thing, make sure you check in with him towards the end of the week, as his offerings are a rare pinnacle source. These are great before you hit 400, but are especially valuable during the final stretch of your grind, where guaranteed +3s are few and far between. The last aspect of the portal I want to cover is Conquests. These are effectively the new Nightfalls, but can only be done once per season. Each one is at a set difficulty with set modifiers, with all of them requiring you to use exclusively new gear through the new Avant-Garde modifier. However, you are well rewarded for your time, since Expert and Master Conquests drop 4 powerfuls before you are 400, and Grandmaster Conquests drop 4 slot-specific pinnacles, which, like Zavala's weekly offerings, are incredibly valuable in the post-400 grind. Now that you know everything there is to know about the portal, it's time we talk about leveling strategies. From 10 to 200, the idea is pretty simple. Just do the legendary Edge of Fate campaign on all 3 characters. This should easily get you to 200, but make sure you are picking up the Kepler buff locked world chests, as these will give you a lot of the power boosts that you need. If for whatever reason you are not at 200 by the time you are done with your campaign, the Kepler side quests all drop at +10 power until you reach 200. Once you reach 200 power, the first part of your portal grinding journey begins. Your main grind is going to rely on 2 options. If you are solo, you're going to be farming solo ops with an emphasis on K1 logistics and Caldera, since these activities are the fastest. It is worth your time to learn optimized routing and strategies, since these activities are going to be your home for a good chunk of the rest of your power grind. As for other solo ops in the playlist, keep track of which ones contain bonus drops and especially bonus focuses so that you can take advantage of them at opportune moments during your grind. None of the solo ops are particularly slow, so if one of them has a bonus focus, it's definitely worth visiting once if you need that particular drop. Say you have a helmet that is lagging behind your account power in the middle of your daily K1 grind. If you know that a bonus focus in the solo ops playlist is a helmet, then you can save your time and prayers to RNG by simply completing that activity and guaranteeing a powerful helmet drop. Speaking of helmets, another tip for you, at any point during your power grind, if you notice your helmet in particular is lagging behind your account power, you can pull a Master Rahul mask, Collections, Flare, 4th tab, at +0. While this mask cannot be infused into any gear, it still counts towards your account power, which is obviously very useful in this particular case. What about fire team ops? Unfortunately, most of these activities are significantly longer than solo ops, and the rewards they provide are unfortunately just not as time efficient compared to your average K1 or Caldera grind. However, if you notice a bonus focus that is useful to you on a fire team op, and the op isn't excessively slow like Inverted Spire, Liminality, Coil, or Onslaught, then it might be worth visiting once just to fill in that slot. While fire team ops are not very appealing for power, pinnacle ops are a different story. If you have competent friends, Starcross is a standout farm, with fast completions around the 5 to 6 minute mark for 2 powerful drops, which, when accounting for load times, is about as time efficient as a decent K1 or Caldera day, while being significantly more enjoyable. While Encore is a decent alternative, it is definitely less efficient post-nerf compared to current Starcross and good solo ops farm days. On the bright side, unlike fire team ops, none of the pinnacle ops are extremely slow, so once again, if you have a useful bonus focus on any of them at a good time, go for it. Unfortunately, or fortunately, Crucible is simply not as time efficient as the best PvE power farms, since you are at the mercy of your own performance in getting an A rank, variable queue times, and significantly longer activity length, even if you can get 2 drops compared to the 1 you get from solo ops. All of this is to say, if you're willing to watch a movie on the side, your main grind is going to be K1, especially on Hive days, with Fireteam Starcross coming in at a close second, and Caldera falling a little further behind that. From 200 to 260-ish, you'll be stacking high modifiers and ignoring the challenge if you can complete the activity fairly quickly, but once you get closer to the 300 threshold, you'll probably start needing to do the challenge until you can start doing Master instead of Expert. Of course, your mileage may vary, so like we mentioned before, make sure you experiment at the start of every 20 threshold to see what works best for you. If you need some pointers, plenty of top level players are uploading their clears on all 3 classes every day, so there's plenty of resources out there to learn routing, strategies, and loadout choices. In between loading into whatever activity you choose for your main grind, keep an eye on your account power using Dim's power feature or by keeping your highest power items on your farming character. If you notice that you have a lagging slot, make sure you're aware of whatever bonus focuses are available to you in all 4 playlists. The power grind can get really frustrating when you land in a rut because one of your slots is holding your drops back, so it is essential to keep these focuses in mind for when they might be helpful. One more thing before we get to the grueling final bracket. Your usage of weekly or event-based pinnacles can be helpful to you during this 200 to 400 bracket depending on the pace you set for yourself. If, for example, you want to reach 450 as quickly as possible, then it would be wiser for you to save your Zavala and Solstice pinnacles until you reach 400. However, if you only want to reach 400, or if you're fine with spreading out your grind over weeks or months, then you are obviously free to use your guaranteed pinnacles to help you out during this 200 to 400 bracket instead. Once you are over 400 power, the true grind begins. Unfortunately, the only farmable sources of power increases past 400 are from RNG prime drops, which can only be obtained from activity completions. Since the completion appears to be all that matters, unless you value the +0 drop that comes from A rank, you really just want to pick an activity that you can finish quickly and run through as fast as possible. There are some theories that certain activities or certain scores may affect the prime drop rate, but there is not enough information beyond anecdotal data sets to support any specific claim. Unfortunately, what this does mean is that you can kiss your Starcross farm goodbye, since that activity takes over 3 times as long as a good K1 run, so you'll be sticking to solo ops once you reach this threshold. Outside of these RNG primes, there is a small list of guaranteed pinnacle sources, but most power grinders have agreed that you should save a good chunk of these for when you hit 447. Because you cannot go past 450 yet, and because 450 is an exact number threshold, 447 to 450 can be an incredibly frustrating experience if you do not have a guaranteed way to fill every slot with a +3. As a result, I'm going to recommend keeping both GM Conquests and the 2 weekly armor focuses you get from Zavala, since they are guaranteed drops that you do not need to rely on RNG for. If you save these 3 sets of drops, the second you hit 447, you will be able to hit 450 instantly, since the Whisper and Delve Conquests cover everything but helmet and class item combined, and you can grab your final 2 missing armor pieces from Zavala. There are only 2 remaining pinnacle sources besides the ones we're saving for 447. The first one is the ongoing Solstice quests, which can give you a +3 in every armor slot, as well as a +3 in the form of a Solstice weapon. These quests can be completed separately on every character for a total of 18 +3 drops, which is incredibly useful, but should be treated like a bonus focus, so use them wisely to milk as much effective power as you can out of them from lagging slots during your prime grind. The final guaranteed pinnacle source is unfortunately another event-based one, the rewards track associated with the ongoing event. During Arms Week, for example, the weapons at the end of every reward track page dropped as pinnacles, and right now the Solstice track weapons are doing the same, so keep that in mind when you might need to grind a specific +3 to fill a gap during your main grind. For those of you that are willing to grind to 450, what do you actually get there? Well, you have a couple options. Though there is no way to consistently farm tier 5 variants of certain weapons and armor even if you are at max power, being at 450 is still the only way to consistently farm the sources that do exist. Thanks to the Kepler Altar upgrade, every Kepler drop is guaranteed tier 5 once you hit 450, so you can focus a specific drop at the altar and go farm Sieve if you want to god roll a Gape, Ion Armor, or anything else from the Kepler pool. In addition, all PvP drops are also tier 5s once you hit 450, including bonus drops. This is where the bonus drops backfill system can be exploited. Bonus drops will always assign themselves to empty slots in activities that are not currently capped at 3, which means you can let them populate activities you don't want to play, and during your solo ops farming sessions, you'll be guaranteed that they fill up the activities that you emptied by completing. For example, I have a friend that was farming tier 5 trials loot just by doing solo ops until trials filled up with 3 bonus drops, finishing 1 match of trials, getting 4 tier 5s, and then going back to solo ops. Finally, the last consistent source of tier 5s is going to be event +1 tier offset drops, like the ones from the current Solstice. Since these drop a tier above whatever 100 threshold you are at right now, if you are at 400 power or above, you probably notice every single Solstice drop is a tier 5 drop, despite you not being at 450. While these +1 tier offsets aren't a regular occurrence, I thought it was still worth mentioning, as it's technically another source of consistent tier 5 drops, even if you don't need to be 450 to access it. The Edge of Fate power grind is a long and arduous one that has been unfamiliar to most Destiny players for years at this point. With this video, my goal is to create a comprehensive resource that helps explain all the little intricacies in the new portal system, as well as the best current strategies for power farming your way to whatever goal you set for yourself. Hopefully, this video will accomplish this goal of covering anything and everything you might want to know about Destiny's latest grind, since a lot of the best information on the subject is scattered in different places or things left unsaid that you'd rather know before the grind instead of finding out for yourself. If you have any questions or feedback, feel free to leave a comment, and best of luck with your grind.